Hello everybody. Mastery quiz number 8 for geometry has to do with special quadrilaterals and the properties of such shapes. Lots of stuff to remember, easy to get confused. So here all we're answering is true and false. So in my little video here all we're going to be doing is basically talking quite a bit and answering true or false here, so hopefully you can follow along. Hopefully I don't confuse you. First statement says that all rectangles are parallelograms. Think about that just for a minute and draw yourself a rectangle. All rectangles are indeed parallelograms. Opposite sides are congruent, opposite sides are parallel, all that stuff that goes into a parallelogram is a rectangle. Number 2, not all squares are rectangles. Well, that would be false. All squares are rectangles. Technically, a square falls into the category of a rectangle. It's just special because all the sides are congruent. So this would be a false statement. Third statement, a kite is a rhombus. That is false. If you remember a rhombus, all 4 sides are congruent, where a kite, it's adjacent sides that are congruent. 2 different pair of adjacent sides that are congruent. Next question, a rhombus is an example of a quadrilateral that is not a parallelogram. Well, that is false. A rhombus is always a parallelogram. All right. Next, a square is a rhombus. Technically, that is true. It's a special rhombus because the interior angles are all right angles. Next, a rhombus always has 4 congruent sides. That would be true, and that would include the square. Next, a parallelogram is never a square. Well, that would be false. A parallelogram is a square if all the angles are right angles and all the sides are congruent, and that would still satisfy those characteristics of a parallelogram. Next, a trapezoid is a parallelogram. That is false. A trapezoid is false. A trapezoid is never a parallelogram. Next, a parallelogram with perpendicular diagonals is a kite. Well, it could be, because a kite, yes, indeed, the diagonals are perpendicular, but they are also perpendicular in a rhombus. So this would have to be a false answer. It's not always going to have to be a kite. It could be another shape. Next, a rectangle is an example of a quadrilateral that is not a kite. That is true. A rectangle is not a kite. Next, all parallelograms are rhombi. Well, that would be false. You can draw lots and lots of different parallelograms that are not a rhombi. Remember, a rhombi has all 4 sides that are congruent, and parallelograms don't have to. It's just opposite sides have to be congruent. A rectangle always has congruent diagonals. That would be true. Carpenters use that all the time to see if windows and doorways are square and all that good stuff. So the diagonals of a rectangle are always congruent. Next, a quadrilateral with bisected diagonals is a parallelogram. That is true. If the diagonals of your quadrilateral cut each other in half, that is part of a parallelogram, and that's true for squares and rectangles and all those things. Next, a parallelogram can never be a trapezoid. That would be true. Parallelograms are totally different than trapezoids. Okay, trapezoids only have 1 pair of sides that are parallel, where a parallelogram has both opposite pairs of sides that are parallel. Next, a rhombus always has 4 congruent sides. That would be true. Next, the definition of a parallelogram states that it is a 4-sided figure whose opposite sides are parallel. That is true. You can see that that definition would fit the definition for a square, a rectangle, a rhombus, all those things. A dart. A dart is an example of a quadrilateral that is not a parallelogram. That would be true. A dart is not a parallelogram. Next, every parallelogram is a rectangle. That would also be false. We can draw lots of parallelograms that aren't rectangles. Are all rectangles squares? No, that would also be false. The opposite is true. If you were to say all squares are rectangles, technically, yes, that is true, but not all rectangles are squares. A kite, next here. A kite is a quadrilateral with two distinct pairs of equal adjacent sides. That is true. Key there is adjacent sides are the same, and they're two distinct. They're different. The two opposites there are the pairs of adjacent sides are different in length. And the last one. A trapezoid can be drawn with only one right angle. Do you think that's true or false? That would be false. If your trapezoid has one right angle in it, it's going to have two because two sides are parallel. I think that does it. Good luck. Hopefully you can keep some of that stuff straight in your head here. Good luck next time you take your mastery quiz.